Hey, excuse me, and welcome to the third short lecture from Chapter 7 in your textbook. And in this one, we're going to return to the idea of ideology that we've already discussed in a couple of chapters. And by the way, I should also mention that ideology is related in very clear ways to that three-dimensional operation of power that operates at the level of deep structure, and perhaps you'll see that as we go through this lecture. So obviously, ideology and power are connected, right? And this goes back to this famous saying by Marx that we already talked about, which is that the ideas of the ruling class are in every epoch the ruling ideas. So what he's saying here is that the ideas of the people in charge are always the ruling ideas. They're the ideas that hold sway in a society, right? And when you sit back and you begin to think about this, it really does make a fair amount of sense. So related to this is the idea that people aren't ruled simply by coercion, or people don't rule simply through exercising coercion. So in other words, you don't hold power entirely by having a gun, right? You also exercise power by shaping the ways that people think and experience the world, right? So again, the idea of affecting people on the level of deep structure, on building who they are, right? And if you can have enough influence over people's beliefs, you can get them to do what you want without even thinking about it. You naturalize your power, right? And so this is what ideology does. This is what ideology is. It's what it does. It operates in the realm of ideas and meanings, right? In beliefs. And that's what ideology is. And ideology is incredibly powerful because it is reality, right? It doesn't just shape reality, it is reality for people. And we could argue that it's impossible at times to even get outside of it, to really examine it, because it's so much a part of who we are that it affects us on such a deep level that we can't really see beyond it. So, for example, in some of my classes, we talk about revolution, and we talk about Marx and the idea of revolution. And I sometimes ask people, my students, why don't you go out and get a gun and get a bunch of other people with guns and go to the mountains and, wage revolution or whatever, right? Hide out and attack the people in charge. It's not like you have a bunch of stuff to lose, right? You're young people. You don't have homes. You don't have families, many of you. Your own families, rather. You have parents and so on, but you're not, many of you are not mothers and fathers and so on yet. And you're not rich, so why not just go get a bunch of guns and take charge, right? And students laugh because it seems like such a silly idea. But I would suggest to you the only reason it seems like a silly idea is because the ideas of the ruling class are the ruling ideas. Right? There's nothing silly about it at all. It's actually a perfectly legitimate way of conducting yourself. It makes more sense than working for $7.50 an hour. Why not go take the rich people out of their homes and murder them and take their things? Yeah, I mean, the short answer is that we don't do it because that's crazy, right? And it's only crazy because the ideas of the ruling class are the ruling ideas. At least that's what Marx would say. Now, for the record, I'm not encouraging you to go make revolution, but that's up to you. So the whole idea here is that ideology is everywhere, right? And so this video, usually I tell you can watch these videos whether you want to or not, but here I really want you to watch this video because this is and I've had it in other lectures too, right? You've seen this before. This is the second time I'm using it in this class because it's that important to me. I really think it's a valuable way of understanding ideology and gives you a really good explanation. And so I encourage you to check it out if you have a mind. So, what is ideology, right? Ideology, what does it do, right? So to define it, we have to talk about what it does. So ideology functions as an interpretive lens, right? You can think about it like glasses. So you put on these glasses when you're born, and you can never take them off, right? That's what ideology is. So you're always looking through the glasses. And so wherever you go, whatever you see your whole life, right? These glasses impact your understanding of what exists, what's good, and what you can do, right? So in this sense, ideology both enables your thinking and it restricts your thinking, right? It gives us, it helps us, it enables us because it helps us understand things. Because there's an already existing kind of structure or lens that we're seeing through, and that helps us to see. But it also restricts our thinking because, again, you're not. I seriously doubt any of you are going to go arm yourselves and go after the 1%, right? It seems very unlikely. So it constrains your thinking. I mean, the truth is, you're not even thinking that. You're thinking, oh, I want to get done this lecture, take the quiz, and then go watch Netflix or whatever, right? Like the whole idea doesn't even really occur to you that you could do that, right? And so it's in this way that ideology constrains our thinking because ideology is reality, right? Ideology is your whole understanding of reality. Our ability to understand what is real is limited, right? It's always limited because we can only experience reality through our senses, right? I mean, you can see things, you can hear them, smell them, taste them, feel them, etc., right? But that, I mean, just because you see something doesn't mean that you're not seeing something else, right? I mean, so for example, on the electromagnetic spectrum, there's only a small part of that spectrum that appears to us as light. Microwaves are part of the same spectrum, for example, that light is, right? But you can't see microwaves, but they're there all the time. And so are radio waves, right? They're bouncing everywhere, but you can't see them. That doesn't mean it's not part of reality, right? And so ideology, it sort of functions in the same way, right? Because ideology is our frame for understanding, and because it's the frame for understanding, because it's our lens for understanding, it's like eyesight, right? So for us, it is reality. It's not how we think about reality, it is reality, because that's the only way we can see it, is through the lens of ideology. And of course, ideology is based in communication, as is everything, right? So as I've challenged many of you before in other classes, words are everything to the extent that you can't even think of things or situations that you don't have words for. Now, we've talked about this before. We can think about things that aren't real, like we can think about unicorns, but the only reason you can think about a unicorn is because you know what a horn is and you know what a horse is. Right? I mean, that's not a stretch. You have words for it, so you can think of it. You can talk about a mermaid because you know what a fish is and what a girl is. But, I mean, we can't think about things we don't have words for. Right? It's just, so it limits us, and that's how ideology works, because ideology is based in communication. And so as a result, the thinker Frederick Jameson has said, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is the end of capitalism for us. And that's true when you think about it, and that's because of ideology. We don't think about capitalism failing, right? And it's much more likely, of course, that capitalism will fail than it is that the world will end anytime soon. But yet we have, The Walking Dead and The Road and all these kinds of post-apocalyptic stories that we tell each other, right, that are very popular. Right, so we imagine the end of the world all the time, but we never think that there's no movies about capitalism ending, right? I mean, I guess it wouldn't be as exciting. Maybe that's why. But he makes a good point, right? And that's because you just don't think of your system as ever breaking down. That's something that I try and impress upon students. Excuse me. When we talk about the financial crisis of 2008. I've done a lot of reading about it, and the truth is, no one understands how close we came to our financial system ending in 2008. For good. Just, capitalism failed. Now we got to think of something else. We were like crazy close to that happening. But that doesn't even occur to people, that our entire economic model would disappear. And the reason it doesn't occur to you is because of ideology. Right? So for Giddens says that ideology doesn't just reflect the dominant system of meanings, It represents a particular reality while obscuring the underlying power relations of that reality. So ideology, it doesn't just reflect these dominant meanings, it reflects them, right? It reflects the dominant values, but it also obscures who's in charge, right? It makes it so that you don't understand the power relations of that reality. So, one of the reasons that ideology works this way is because it represents particular group interests as universal. So, that means that the interests of the ruling class are put in front of you, or presented to you in such a way that you seem included in this group, even when you're not. So a way to think about this would be then to think in terms of capitalism, right? So we all seem to like capitalism, right? I mean, I don't think any of you are crazed socialists, right, or communists. But I don't know, maybe you are. But I mean, we all seem cool with capitalism, right? Even though very few of us are actually capitalists. Which means, to be a capitalist in the true sense of the word means that you possessed capital and that you don't have to work for someone else, right? When in fact, the vast majority of us, 99% of us, do have to work for someone else. But yet we're cool with that. We're cool with capitalism, right? Which makes no sense at all, when you think about it. So, the other thing ideology does is that it obscures or denies contradictions in society, right? So it hides the basic contradictions that operate in everyday organizational life. So, for example, it obscures the contradictions inherent in capitalism, right? So we all hear about, well, maybe you haven't heard about it, but the Horatio Alger myth. So the Horatio Alger myth originates out of American culture during the industrial era. And it's the story of someone who goes to work, works hard, and makes it, right? And that's the whole idea of American capitalism, right? Neoliberal economics. The idea that if you work really hard and pull yourself up by the bootstraps, you can make it, right? But what this story that we all tell one another, right, and that we all supposedly believe in, what it does is that it obscures the structural inequities of reality, right? The fact that that's not really how it works most of the time, right? Indeed, rich people's children are rich because their parents are rich, not because they work hard in most cases, right? I would suggest to you that the person who cleans and waxes the floors in the college works considerably harder than people who are paid a lot more. But we don't talk about those things, right? Because ideology obscures them. It hides these problems, right? So another example of this. So we talk to people and we say, so how do you think wealth is allocated in this country, and how should it be allocated, right? Like what do you think about who's got the money? So when we ask people to estimate who's got the money, right, this is the way that they come up with it. So the idea is, right here, what we see, well, hell, it says it here at the bottom, the actual United States wealth distribution plotted against the estimated and ideal distributions. And because of their small percentage share of total wealth, both the bottom, both the fourth 20% value and the bottom 20% value are not visible in the actual distribution. So this is how wealth is allocated in the United States. So the top 20% of people control well over 80% of the wealth, about 85% of the wealth, right? And so much so, in fact, that the people at the bottom of the rung don't even appear on the graph. Right? Now, if you ask people to estimate, they'd say, well, the top 20% of people probably control a little over 50% of all the wealth, right? But that's not how it is, right? They control like 85% of the wealth. And if you ask people, well, how should it really be? Well, the top 20% should probably deserve like 30% of the wealth, and then the rest should be distributed amongst people, right? But look how different reality is from what the ideal is, right? And look how different it is from what people really estimate, right? I mean, what this means is that ideology has hidden from us the fact that 20% of the people control 85% of all the wealth in the country. That's crazy, right? That's wildly disproportionate. But yet we don't think of it that way. I mean, if you look at this, you should think twice about even going to college, shouldn't you? Because your chances of getting you some of that are pretty damn slim, right? Another reason for revolution. Not that I'm preaching revolution. So another thing that ideology does is that it reifies social relations. So what that means is well, in a simpler term, ideology naturalizes and negates contingencies. So what this means, it makes it seem like the way things are the only way they ever could have been. That's what it means when it says it naturalizes and negates contingencies. So of course it is the way it is. How else could it be? Right? Is what ideology makes you think. Right? And so it works to make it seem as if organizations are objective structures. It reifies them. So it makes them seem as if organizations are objective structures that exist independently of communication behavior and the outside influence of people. So things are just the way they are. So we talk about the justice system, for example, as if, the justice system exists on its own. It doesn't. Right? The justice system in this country is made up of people communicating. It's not a thing by itself. But ideology makes us talk about it like it's a thing. Well, the justice system is not fair in this country. It's racist. It's all these other things. And it is. Right? But we talk about it as if it's a thing that's unfair or racist. It's not a thing. It's a bunch of people. And it doesn't have to be that way. They can change it. But ideology makes it seem as if the way it is just, that's just the way it is. Things are the way they are. And it makes it seem as if you're dealing with a thing rather than people who can change it. Another example would be ideology. For a long time, it made it seem natural that men would go to work and women would stay at home. And in doing so, it negated possibilities. It eliminated the possibilities of women going out and doing all kinds of things, right? I mean, Jesus Christ, imagine what the world would have been like if women only came into the workplace in a big way over the past 50 years. Imagine if we had the contribution of women to science and the business and industry in a serious way for centuries. It'd be a whole different world, most likely, right? We missed out on all those contributions. But it just seemed like, well, of course, men go to work and women clean the house. So ideology can hamper us and make it seem like things are just the way they are. Sort of like ideology makes it seem reasonable that 20% of the people control 85% of the wealth. It doesn't have to be that way, right? All right, so that's it for this short lecture. Thanks for checking it out. And next time we'll talk briefly about corporate colonization and resistance.